Well, let's get over to Sydney and join Neil Burgess. He's Senior Commodities Analyst for Agribusiness at Westpac. Neil, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Let's just talk a little bit about this whole agricultural commodities complex. We've seen what's happened with gold. When we see equity prices fall, we've seen gold fall. Now, that wasn't the case before. What about the rest of what's happening with these agricultural commodities? Are they following the same sort of thing and being seen as a risk-on trade?
They certainly are. I mean, you look at across the grains complex, wheat, corn, soybeans. I mean, they've all taken, a fair beating in prices over recent weeks. As everybody sort of, runs away from the risk, the nervousness that's been put into the market for the European issues, and certainly the ag commodities have fallen foul of that.
Right, but the fundamentals surely haven't changed. I mean, that's key here. And when do people start looking at that?
Well, this is it. I mean, you make a very valid point. I mean, there is no fundamental bad news out in the market. I mean, we're looking at, corn stocks are very tight, while there is adequate wheat, but ultimately people still have to eat. And this, this really doesn't seem to be, taking any precedent in the market at this moment in time. It seems to be that the technical side of the market is driving it, and the poorer fundamentals are having to take a bit of a back seat.
Yeah, and when we, again, talk about these fundamentals, and that was actually what was driving the prices higher in recent months and years, it's all about a growing middle class in Asia, and they still need feeding, and they're going to be eating more, aren't they?
Well, that's right. I mean, as wealth, is generated and, consumers have more money in their pocket, certainly their choice of diet changes, and they prefer, a better quality of food. And ultimately, this should, transfer back into the market, and we should actually see prices, and certainly commodity prices, as demand increases, certainly commodity prices rise.
Neil, of course, eating patterns are changing, diets are changing in this part of the world as well. So how does that impact what's going on in this space?
Well, certainly, I mean, as diets change, I mean, primary producers, will try and act on those signals. If you're seeing, greater demand, certainly, for corn, you will see more corn planted. It's the same with soybeans, wheat, etc. And that's certainly, we're seeing that, here in Australia, that we're trying to, to match the need that's out there in the international market.
Well, let's just talk about some of the, dynamics behind some of the particular commodities we're talking about. Let's talk about coffee, because we just heard about coffee stocks being on a caffeine high from Suzanne O'Hara, my colleague, in that report. What about that? I mean, do you play the actual companies that sell the stuff, or do you actually get the physical commodity itself?
I'm sorry, actually, I didn't quite catch your question.
I'm saying, right, so let's say you want to play the market and you want to, let's say, take a view like on coffee, for instance. Do you actually buy the coffee sellers like Starbucks, for instance, or do you actually get into the commodity market itself? What's going to be the better play?
Oh, no, that's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, certainly from my point of view, I mean, I actually look at the physical commodities, and that's not something that's done, certainly from my desk. At this point in time, that is a really difficult question to give you a definitive answer on that. I mean, certainly, if you're actually looking at, from the primary production point of view, those fundamentals that you pointed out, ultimately people are still, still requiring to eat. Those primary production, is still required. Look, this is a personal opinion, but certainly, I think that primary production side is one to watch.
Yeah, well, we're watching out for it, Neil. Thank you so much for your time. Neil Burgess there joining us from Sydney at Westpac.